Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session. Today, we're going to talk about Azure Arc. And this session is called Arc Unleash, Engage, Learn, and Master. So it's a hands-on session where you're going to get to do things by hand for 90 minutes. Before we actually start, we needed your help to do something. Who has seen the past Apple conference, the one a couple of weeks back? Anyone seen the Apple conference? No one? Okay. Okay. So in the conference, this was this stunt, and this meme was very viral. So we wanted to put a joke in it, but we had the fight which joke is funnier. So we asked to get your help to find a good PowerShell dad joke that would fit in this meme that we're going to use later on. So to give you some inspiration, Jan is going to use AI to give you some inspiration, and then let's see if anyone has any funny jokes that would fit this meme.
Sure. All right, let's go to the next one. So, of course, we're using some AI here as well to figure out some jokes. So here I told the prompt, by the way, this is Doug Fink's PS AI PowerShell module to use for interaction. So I told it that the prompt is you're at the conference, say some funny dad joke-inspired PowerShell jokes, and for example, some worst practices, and add some emojis. So that's basically the prompt. So let's click it and see what comes out of it. Yeah, so now it's thinking, coming back with hopefully some jokes. It's fingers crossed. Yeah. Oh no. Is AI letting us down? Oh no! Oh yeah, it worked. So these are really terrible jokes. Are there anyone that have any better ones? I think the combination of dad jokes and PowerShell jokes can be kind of risky, but yeah, there are some good ones here.
I think that this one is good.
Yeah, kept running in loops. All right, we'll share the prompt on the social media afterwards. All right.
Okay, thanks to our sponsors. And then let's introduce ourselves. Start with Jan.
Yeah, so my name is Jan. I work at Microsoft, based out of Norway. So I'm a cloud solution architect working with enterprise customers. I'm also a core maintainer on the Azure Arc Jumpstart project. So the Jumpstart project, we're coming back to it, what it is, but it's basically something we're going to leverage here today for the labs. So you will really get to know more about it. Contact information, if you want to connect afterwards, if you have any questions, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn or whatever preferred method.
And I'm Seif Bassem. I'm also a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. I work at a team called the Tech Strategy team. If you know Azure Landing Zones, we're the team that builds Azure Landing Zones and maintains them. I'm also a core maintainer at the Jumpstart project. And part-time, I have some other capabilities like pancakes, driving kids, stuff like that. So I work for this little dude there. And here's my contact information. I have a blog, YouTube channel, and on LinkedIn as well. So thank you for that. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today. So mainly, if you've never heard about Azure Arc, we're going to give a very high-level overview about what problems does it solve, why does it exist. And then we're going to talk about what is the Jumpstart project. This is the bolt icon there, and how it can help you learn more about Azure Arc and implement it at your organization. And then we're going to have a hands-on lab. So Arc has lots of capabilities Jan is going to talk about. So we're going to walk you through how to implement those capabilities and how to experience them in your Azure environment. We know 90 minutes is too long, so we're going to have a couple of breaks so that you can freshen up a little bit. So let's start with what is Azure Arc.
Yeah. So how many here have heard about Azure Arc before or know what it is? I would say the majority of the room, maybe two-thirds. Right. So we just wanted to give some context before we dive into the labs, just some brief introduction. So Go to the next slide. There might be multiple reasons why customers can't run all of their workloads in the cloud, right? There can be regulations, there can be sensitive applications with regards to latency. Maybe there is an edge location. Maybe your workload needs to function regardless of network connectivity. So the workload needs to stay on premises, needs to stay on a factory or a floor or a production plant or whatever edge location there is. So this is where Arc comes in. So you can still run your workload wherever you need. It can be edge, it can be other clouds, AWS, GCP. Everything outside of Azure basically is where the workload can live. And this is where Arc comes in. So it can be the single pane of glass with regards to management. So then you get a consistent management experience, regardless of where your workloads run. And the workloads, it can be based on virtual machines, which is the topic for today, Arc-enabled servers. But we also have Arc-enabled Kubernetes. We have Arc-enabled data services like SQL Server, Postgre, managed SQL to run on the edge, for example. So there are a lot of other scenarios, but the topic for today is Arc-enabled servers. That's what we're going to go through in the labs. Yeah, so here are just some examples of where the various workloads can live. So I already touched about lots of this, but on the workload side, it can be, doesn't matter. It's agnostic to what kind of technology the application is running. It might even be an IoT application, right? That there are some integrations with. So we have a capability called IoT operations, which was released in preview at the last Ignite. So that enables scenario where you connect to on-premises PLSs or OPC systems and things that are typically associated with the OT world. Yeah, so basically, Azure Arc enables both the management and you can also deploy things from Azure. So for example, if you use Azure Stack HCI, which is one option, you can deploy virtual machines that are running outside of Azure via Azure. So you can basically use declarative approaches like Bicep, Terraform, CLI, Azure PowerShell to deploy virtual machines running on your infrastructure powered by Azure Arc. So this enables a lot of capabilities on top of just seeing the server or the workload in the Azure portal, right? So we get single pane of glass with regards to all of these management capabilities on the top. For security, we have Defender, right? Azure Monitor for monitoring and all of these other things. For today's topic, for example, update management to get a single pane of glass for the compliance for all of your Windows and Linux servers. That is one key thing, but you can also orchestrate the update, the patching of your servers in maintenance windows and all of the details that we're going to dive into today across wherever the service is living. So today we are going to set up a Sandbox environment powered by the Azure Arc Jumpstart project. So this is what we are going to deploy. We are going to use, it's up to you if you want to use ARM, the portal experience, to deploy it via the graphical interface in the portal, or if you want to use Bicep as the declarative approach, you do it from the CLI. But what you're going to deploy, it's one resource group that you have to deploy in your Azure subscription. So that's the prerequisite you need. You need access to an Azure subscription where you have owner permissions. Inside of here, we're going to deploy one virtual network that is fully isolated, just scoped for this workshop, not connected to any of your other networks. On top of here, we're going to deploy one big virtual machine with 64 gigabytes of memory, so it can host other VMs. So we're using nested virtualization here in Hyper-V. So when you deploy the template, it will spin up all of these resources and it will download some pre-configured VHD files for 2 Windows servers, 2 Linux servers, and it's going to Arc-enable 2 of them, and the other one you're going to Arc-enable and get hands-on with the onboarding experience yourself. And on top of that, after we have onboarded the servers, you get to experience some of the capabilities. We can't explore all of them in 90 minutes. That's typically a 2-day workshop if you're going to do everything. But we've tried to pick out the most important ones like the onboarding, the monitoring, and so forth.
And if there are any capabilities, for example, like Defender that you're interested in, but we don't have at the end, we're going to let you know how you can actually deploy this and experience the rest of the capabilities. So no worries if you missed anything here. Okay, so if you've already deployed this before the session, that's great. If not, we're going to do this together. So we're going to ask you to go to this aka.ms link so that you get the deployment instructions. As Jan said, what you need to have is an Azure subscription. You need to be owner on this subscription, and you need to make sure that you have enough CPUs in the region that you're going to deploy in. All of this is in this link, step by step on how to deploy this. The only one disclaimer here is after the lab, make sure to turn off the VM or delete it because you're going to run out of money before you get back home. So just make sure to deallocate it. So actually, let's start doing the actual deployment. I'm going to deploy it together with you. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to get ready to jump into your Azure portal so that we can start deploying the environment. So the instructions for this, you have two options to do this. After we deploy this ArcBox deployment in the VM, when you RDP in the VM, you're going to find all the instructions in the VM, so you don't have to switch context and jump between machines. But for the initial deployment, we're going to follow the guide available here. Okay, so the first prereq that you need to have is we need to have those resource provider registered on your subscription to support Azure Arc and the other capabilities that we're going to demo. So you can either use Azure CLI or you can just jump to the portal, select your subscription, and just register those resource providers. So let me show you how it's done. And you just need to search one by one, click on it, and click register. That's all you need to do to make sure that you have all the prereqs ready. Okay, so if you're ready, as Jan mentioned, there are two options. You can simply just deploy through the portal, or if you prepare to use Azure CLI to deploy using Bicep, you're going to find the second option to do that. For simplicity, I'm going to use the portal deployment. There are just a couple of parameters that you need to provide. So let's do this together. I'll create a resource group, STUS. So the two most important parameters are the username and the password of the big VM that Jan was talking about. Well, you need to remember those because this is how we're going to log into the VM and do all of the capabilities. So just make sure to use credentials that you would remember. And the last one here, just provide your email address. This is required because we're going to experience monitoring and we're going to configure some alerts. So you would see how those alerts would be sent to your inbox, how they look like, so that you can experience the whole thing. If you don't want to do that, you can provide any dummy email. one other thing to note is the RDP port. So we added this because if you're using a subscription that has some policies that denies RDP, so you can put any custom port here, and we're gonna configure automatically the VM to use that port. So if this doesn't sound right, forget about it, leave it as is. For me, I'm gonna set it to 13389. This is going to take approximately, I think, 8 minutes to deploy. So what's happening now is the architecture diagram that Jan showed. It's going to deploy all of those resources. And then there are some PowerShell scripts, DSC configuration that are going to run to configure Hyper-V, do everything. And Jan is going to talk a little bit about that. So we're just going to wait for a couple of minutes for you to catch up. And then Jan is going to talk about the Jumpstart project, what it is during the deployment, so that we don't lose time. Okay, any questions so far? Anyone facing any problem?
Off. Okay, that's it. Don't mind.
Is it available even after the conference?
Yeah, it will be available, yes. Okay. Break first.
Yeah, so we can do a 5-minute break just to wait for the deployments and get everyone actually kick the deployment off. So feel free to go and fill up your coffee or, while we wait for everyone to catch up.
Yeah. Så ser jeg my laptop going by. It's not to get my laptop signed. Slide.
Yeah, could you get one slide back?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that link, if you just store that link.
We fail the from the users away.
2 more minutes.
Okay, could we get a raise of hands on how many people have triggered the deployment? Okay, it failed. Let's have a quick look. Okay.
Try a different region, maybe.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Start.
Yeah. All right, so while the deployments are running and maybe you're doing the final touches to get it going, I just wanted to say some words about the Jumpstart and what it is while we wait for the deployments to run. So the Arc Jumpstart, it actually started a few years ago as a project, I think it was in 2020, by a team of 1-2 persons. And since that, it has scaled and become much bigger. So it's basically a project to make it possible to go from zero to hero, to evaluate, test, and kind of see what is the value of the platform with regards to the capabilities that we talked about before the break. So see what's in it, how to use the different features without spending a lot of time reading documentation, setting up VMs, maybe setting it up on premises, right, in order to have something to test on. So what the Jumpstart is using, we're actually using Azure, even though Arc is meant to be deployed outside of Azure. The Jumpstart team is using Azure for hosting, call it emulated edge locations, basically. So in the Jumpstart universe, there are a lot of elements to it. So what we are testing today is Arcbox with the nested VMs that you just saw for testing and evaluating Arc-enabled servers and related capabilities. But we also have a lot of standalone scenarios. I think it's more than 100 scenarios, maybe between 100 and 150 scenarios to test various detailed things like, for example, machine configuration in basically DSC via Azure Arc. Lot of other granular scenarios, not just for Arc-enabled servers, but for Kubernetes and all of the other things that we have talked about. Then we have HCI box, which is similar to ArcBox, but here we are actually simulating 2 physical nodes for hosting virtual machines on premises. So basically Hyper-V as the hypervisor. So as an alternative to other virtualization technologies like VMware and others, HCI box is meant to run on physical servers, but here we are running the emulated physical servers inside of Azure to make it possible to evaluate and see how does this solution work without having access to any physical servers. That's HCI box. Agora, that's also rather new. About 1 year ago, we released the initial version of Agora, and that is more focused on industries. So retail and manufacturing is the industries that we have now to showcase how does it work in the real life with the applications running inside of Kubernetes. How can it be used in, for example, stores to use AI to detect customers in the store via simulated camera as an example in that specific scenario to see how many cashiers should be present and so forth. So really to showcase more, not only the technology, but the real world use cases. So Agora is really great to see that industry-specific use cases. And the last piece was actually announced at the Build in 2024, last month. And this is a place to have a curated place to have community contributions, not complete scenarios, but more those smaller pieces, like, for example, a simple command to onboard a server or something that you have created that can be useful for the community. It can be a small PowerShell script, it can be a bash script, it can be a template for whatever you want. So think of it as a modern version of maybe TechNet Gallery, where we stored artifacts in the past, right? So definitely check this out. And we also have a lot of course, the Jumpstart webpage, aka.ms/Azure Arc Jumpstart, with all of the documentations about all of this. We have a YouTube channel, and a lot of other things to check out, diagrams to showcase the architecture on how the various pieces of Azure Arc is aligned and so forth. Definitely check it out. Yeah, so basically fully automated Azure Arc Sandbox environment. So when you kick off the deployment like you have done now, there will be triggered an automation inside of the virtual machine that is getting deployed. So basically some PowerShell scripts that are going to fully provision those nested VMs. It's going to onboard them to Azure Arc and configure all of these various aspects. So the goal is that you come to a fully configured environment where you can explore the capabilities. So this is basically what we are using for this lab, what is called ArcBox IT Pros, which is what we're using today. But we also have other flavors with different pieces of technology. So I think the next one is just to explain a little bit about what's going on first. So we have actually started to use winget configuration. Who haven't heard about winget configuration before? Couple of people. Definitely check out Dimitri's session later today about winget configuration. So it's basically a way to use winget to apply desired state configurations. So instead of writing them in PowerShell as we're used to, it's declarative in this YAML format, where you can apply regular DSC resources. For example, install packages like whatever you use in ArcBox, install PowerShell 7, and all of these other tools. So we are actually started to use winget configuration in ArcBox just recently. We also use Pester for testing things. So, for example, check that the VMs are onboarded to Arc and all of these other things that we want to test on the infrastructure side. So under the hood, the point is that there is a lot of automation going on there. Yeah, so then I think we're starting to get ready to actually start with the first modules. So let's see if your environment is up and running, Seif.
Yeah. So I had the region, yeah. Let me.
Yeah, okay.
So I already have another instance deployed. So once you have everything is green, the deployment is ready. All you need to do is just open the RDP port in the network security group so that you can RDP into the VM. once you RDP in the VM, you're going to start seeing, you're not going to see this wallpaper yet. You're going to see what Jan was explaining, some DSC configuration running. Leave those PowerShell prompts running. Once it's done, you're going to see that the background is going to change, and you're going to see the pester tests as we check if the Arc servers are onboarded. Everything that we have in the demo environment is ready, so you should see 5 tests succeeded. And once you're at that stage, now you're ready to start doing the different exercises. So I think it will take like 5 minutes once you log into the machines, then we would be ready to go. Anyone has reached this? Anyone see this, or you're still deploying? Still deploying? Okay, that's fine.
Maybe while it's deploying, we can show how to open the RDP port, because that you can do even though the deployment is running. You can open a new tab, find the VM, and Seif can show how you actually configure the network security group to allow RDP into the VM.
So in the resource group that you've deployed, everything that we deploy is going to be contained within this resource group. So this is our main machine, the ArcBox client. All you need to do is just go into this machine, go to network settings, and create an inbound port. So this is just to allow us to RDP into the machine. So if you've not changed this, then you can select RDP and click Add.
And also consider, if you want, you can select source my IP address to lock it down to the IP that we come from right now.
Yeah, if you don't want to use any, you can just use my IP address and that's it.
And if you are in a corporate environment where you are blocked to use public IPs, then it's also an option to not use public RDP, but use Azure Bastion instead. So if you remember from the deployment, there was an option there to say true to Azure Bastion. So that's kind of the fallback option for remoting into the environment.
And as you're waiting, this is what we're showing in the architecture diagram. So once you're done, you're going to see that you have Hyper-V. We have four machines, 2 Windows, 2 Linux. 1 Windows and 1 Linux are already onboarded to Azure Arc by the automation. So if I go to in the portal, and if I go to Arc and click machines, I'm going to see 1 Windows, 1 Linux already onboarded to Azure Arc and ready to get going. In the first exercise, you're going to onboard the other 2. Of course, it's optional. If you prefer Windows, do the Windows. If you prefer Linux, do the Linux. If you want to do both, definitely do both. So let me scroll down. And in different Arc boxes, this is focused on Windows servers. We have also one focused on SQL Server with Azure Arc, and there is other flavors like Arc-enabled Kubernetes. It has some scenarios. It has some applications deployed, so you can see the full capabilities, SQL managed instance. So ArcBox has different flavors depending on your interest or your focus area. So today we're just focusing on Windows Server.
Something about the deployment error you mentioned?
It's the region, because I have another instance in the same region and the VM is big, so I have limited CPUs. That's why I got the error. Yeah.
Maybe you can quickly show where you can see the CPU quotas in the portal for those.
Yes, of course. So in my subscriptions, if I go to usage and quotas, I can see the available CPUs that I have. There is a CLI command that we put in the instruction as well, so you can quickly check how many CPUs that you currently have. So this is usually a good practice in general to monitor this in your Azure environment to make sure that you're not hitting any limits, because then you're going to have to open a support case and it takes some time.
Yeah, or you can also try to adjust it here. If it's a low increase, it's a high chance it will be automatically approved within a minute or two.
Yes.
But if it's a large quota request, it's typically a support request. So yeah. So that was probably the error that you're seeing, that there are not sufficient amount of CPUs available. I think we use 16 vCPUs.
16,
yeah, for the template. All right. Should we switch computers so I can think? Yeah.
It's deadline. It's very difficult. I think it would tell you questions.
To bring yours.
Yours will be? Yeah. I think it's very important to you fixed that. Because I've seen it. I don't suspect it. Yeah. I don't know.
You want to use this?
No.
You don't? Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through the first module. So I have access to a couple of environments. I have one pre-created module or one pre-created instance that we're going to remote into here, because some of the things we are going through is going to take some time. So in order to be able to show everything without waiting like 5 minutes here and there, I'm going to switch between the pre-provisioned environment and the fresh environment that is similar to yours. So let's log into both. This is the pre-configured one, which has some pieces pre-configured and ready to go. And the other one is this one, which is exactly the same as yours. I haven't touched the thing here. The automation has been run exactly the same. So after you open up the RDP port, you connect to the VM that Seif showed you. So also just to make sure that everyone are clear on that, when you go to the ArcBox VM, click connect. Click this connect button and you can download the RDP file, and it will connect to this public IP if you have already opened the network port right in network settings. So that's the thing to get there. Alternatively, you can just do as I did, copy the public IP, open mstsc.exe and put it right in here. And if you have done a custom port, for example 443, in order to go through most firewalls, you just simply colon 443 at the end and it should be good to go. But we tested on the conference Wi-Fi, so it should work with the 3389 at least in our tests. When you're in the client VM, go to lab instructions on the desktop, so you don't have to switch back and forth between local and remote. Scroll down, and here you can see that we have already, let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so now we have actually deployed ArcBox, right? Hopefully it's starting to get provision for everyone. So now we're going to go through the onboarding modules and see how we can onboard one Windows server is what I'm going to show you here. So if we go to Arc in the top here, Azure Arc, that's kind of the landing page for all of the Arc services. What we are looking at today is machines, which is in practice Arc-enabled servers. So here you can see all of the machines that you have onboarded in your environment. And let me just scope this to the follow along resource group so we don't see all of the other pre-existing stuff. And as you can see here, we have 2 VMs onboarded. And if we see in the Hyper-V Manager, as Seif showed you, we should see that we have 4, right? So the task for module 1 is to onboard one of those machines. So we have Ubuntu 1 and Windows Server 2019, which is onboarded. So let's start by logging on to the 2022 machine. So that's the one that I'm going to onboard today. The password for all of the VMs is arcdemo123, as outlined in the instructions. So now I'm in the nested virtual machine here. As you can see, it's basically an enhanced session, so it's possible to copy content from the clipboard directly into that VM. So let's go back to the instructions and have a look at what we're actually going to do here. So let me click on number 1, onboard. And this is basically what we have done, right? You can search for Arc in the portal, go to machines. You can also go to it directly, as you can see here. And this is what we just had a look at. We have logged into the machine. If you're really interested in the Linux experience, you can also try to log into the Ubuntu 02 if you want to onboard that instead. And when it comes to onboarding, there are multiple options. So let us first talk a little bit about that. So if we go to the documentation, there are 2 sections here. One is connect machines interactively, which we are going to do now. We're going to add a single server. We're going to authenticate interactively. But there are other options. You can do it from Admin Center. You can do it at scale with PowerShell, or you can do it at scale with a lot of other mechanisms, as you can see here. For example, if you use Configuration Manager for your Windows machines, there are custom task sequences or scripts available for using in Configuration Manager. You can also use Group Policy if you're in a Windows environment, or you can use Ansible Playbook. So there are multiple options here to do it at scale, but for the purpose here, it's just do it for a single machine just to see how it works when we do it manually. So let's go back to the portal, click on Machines and Add Create. Then we do Add Machine. And here you have the different options, right, that I told you about, how to add multiple servers, but also to do it from AWS or directly from Update Management if you have already using that service for your machines. But for today, let's use add a single server to keep it simple. So here it will ask you the usual stuff when you create things in Azure. So the resource group. For that, we just choose the name of the resource group that we deployed the instance to. So you don't have to create a new one. Depending on what you want to onboard, the Ubuntu or the Windows machine, choose your operating system. Region, here you can choose any region if you want, but I'm going to do the same region as I deployed my Arc instance to. So North Europe, I'm selecting Windows. And for the connectivity method, for today, we are going to use public endpoint, but for your enterprise scenario, it's likely that you have servers behind maybe a proxy server, or you want to use private endpoint to have the traffic go via ExpressRoute or VPN, then that's another option. But for keeping things simple in this Sandbox environment, we're using the public endpoint. Next, there are some metadata you can optionally add here. So, for example, Antwerp for the city or whatever metadata is applicable to your scenario. And on the next page, you get the actual onboarding script. So this is a PowerShell script. If you selected Linux, you will get a bash script, but we're using Windows in this demo. So I'm just going to select copy to clipboard in this case. I'm going back to the virtual machine environment, going into the 2022 machine, and let's first just open Notepad and see that we can actually copy the content in here. So as long as you get the content into Notepad, we're good. Then you can go ahead and open PowerShell. PowerShell 7 should be already available, so you could choose to open that and simply paste the script in there. So let's just go ahead and paste it. So what it's doing now, it's actually downloading the MSI file for the installer. It has been set up with what you selected in the portal as the arguments, right? The resource group and the location and everything. And even the tags for the metadata, you can see on the far right here that is being put in as metadata on the actual object tags city equals Antwerp. This should go pretty quick. Now you can see that it pops up a browser asking you to log into Azure to authenticate, and this is because I did the interactive experience, right? So when you do this at scale, you typically use a service principal. Then you have to use either a client secret or, which was recently introduced, I think it was in 1.40 or 41 for the agent, the option to use certificates. So you can avoid the clear text secrets. So that's also something to check out. All right, so now I have to authenticate to the portal to do that. So let me just my password for that. So here it's typically sign in with the username and password that you used for your Azure portal, but I'm now doing it inside of the virtual machine. Copy password. And then it will probably be an MFA prompt. Oh, I was already signed in. Okay, then we're good. And then you should see that the machine is connected to Azure. So what could possibly go wrong here is that I think it will fail if you have not already registered the resource provider, right?
And the permissions, if you don't have the right permissions.
Yeah, so if you don't have owner permissions, or there is also a granular role, right, for Arc onboarding that you could assign to the service principal. But if you're owner, at least for the sake of the demo, you can go ahead and do that. So at this point, if we go back to the portal and we go back to machines and do refresh here, we would expect the 2022 machine to pop up here, right? So if you go into that machine, you should see that all of the information about the machine, operating system, versions, agent version 143, which is the latest, and the tag city equals Antwerp, for example, that is already available there. One last thing I wanted to mention before handing over to Seif is regarding the onboarding experience for Windows Server 2025, because here we have a Windows Server 2025 machine, which is the latest preview. And if you go into Server Manager here, you can see Azure Arc Management disabled. So if you click on that one, you can actually, instead of doing what I just did, going and getting the PowerShell script from the portal, you can click on that one, and it will actually go ahead and download the latest agent for you from the portal. You can select all of the information. Here you sign into Azure with a device code if needed. You get asked the same things that we did regarding which subscription, which resource groups, and then it will basically hook up and do the same thing. So this is more for the interactive one single server experience. That's also available for 2022, I believe. So if you have the latest updates for Windows Server 2022, you go down here, click on this icon. There you should see this Arc icon. So if you right-click on that, launch Azure Arc Setup, it's the same experience. So you go through a wizard, and it's very easy and here it can say, because now I did it on my Azure virtual machine, right? So it detects that it's running on an Azure virtual machine. So if you're going to do that, you have to disable some or enable some firewall rules to disable it to be able to detect that it's running inside of an Azure VM. But when you do this inside of the nested VMs, that's not an issue. So that's it for the onboarding module. Then I think Seif is ready for the next topic, which was
resource graph.
Resource graph, yeah. Let's just quickly change.
Also an option to do it by initiatives or policies.
Yes, there is in the documentation you're going to find there is a PowerShell script that creates a group policy for you that basically creates a scheduled task to download the agent from UNC share and then install it and do the onboarding. So there is a automated process for that to do it using GPO in the documentation. Yeah. So usually we see most Windows customers use either GPO or Configuration Manager to do that onboarding. Yeah. Okay, so now we've got one machine onboarded. To warm up, we're going to start with a very light capability, which you get as you onboard the server to Azure Arc, which is Azure Resource Graph queries. Azure Resource Graph is no-cost service on Azure that allows you to query the ARM metadata of any Azure resource. So, as we said, Arc onboards or projects on-premises servers, and once you have the agent, there are some metadata that gets sent to Azure. That's why we selected a region as we're onboarding Azure Arc. The server stays on-prem, but the region is for storing this kind of metadata. So what Azure Resource Graph allows you to do, it allows you to query those metadata. So imagine if you have 100 servers on-prem, 100 servers in AWS, 100 servers on Azure, and you want to see how many machines are still on 2012. Without Azure Arc, you'd have to run this query in different systems depending on where the servers are hosted. But as you onboard all of them to Azure Arc, now you have this single pane of glass where you can query from one place and get this information regardless where the servers are hosted. So what we're going to do now is we're going to apply a tag, and tags are a capability that Arc brings to your on-prem and multi-cloud servers. We're going to apply a tag, and then we're going to query those servers with those tags and look at the CPU cores, etc., from the Azure Resource Graph. So to do that, I'm going to, let me just copy that. I'm going to go to the Azure Arc Center, machines, and I'm going to select the 2019 machine. And as you can see, if you've worked with Azure, this looks familiar. This is one of the servers on my Hyper-V, but as you can see, it's as if it's an Azure VM. So I can do everything, almost everything that I can do with an Azure VM on this projected machine. So I'm going to go to tags, and I'm going to add a tag called scenario. Oh, bad internet. You refresh. Okay, does not want me to add a tag. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna add a tag. Usually you would add maybe cost center, maybe other tags depending on what you have in your environment. So once I've added a tag, now I'm gonna go to Resource Graph Explorer. And the syntax here is similar to Kusto. So if you worked with Log Analytics Sentinel, the query language is very, very similar. So if you go to your instructions, you're gonna find some queries that we're gonna use. You can run those queries from the Azure portal, or if you prefer, there is a PowerShell module where you can run those queries directly from PowerShell and Azure CLI. So for simplicity, I'm going to do this from the Azure portal. So the first query that we have is just to list all of the Arc-enabled machines. So I'm going to just run this. And this is going to show me the 2 machines that I already have onboarded. And you can see some metadata that are available for each machine. So if I scroll down, I'm going to see the IP address. You can get the serial number. You can get the number of extensions installed, memory, CPU, if there is SQL on this machine or not, cloud provider, processor, etc., etc. So this is useful for inventory and reporting. Now I want to get only the machines that have the tag that I've just configured. So I'm going to scroll down. This is the PowerShell module that I was talking about. So this is how you would usually run it. So the same query, but you provide it as a parameter. So depending on your preference. So for this query, I'm just gonna get the CPU cores, and I'm gonna create a pie chart to get the CPU cores by operating system. So this is the text result. If I click on charts, I can select like a donut chart, and I can see for Windows I have 2 cores, for Linux I have 2 cores. So this is just an example. You can do whatever queries that like. It supports joins, so you can make a very complex query depending on your reporting needs. Okay, and now let's query the tags. This is sorry, let me move this. And here I'm just querying, show me all of the machines with this specific tag that I've set up. So that's why it's returning only 1. So this is just to show you what can you do with Azure Resource Graph. Usually mixing this with tags is a great feature that allows you to select a specific project or a specific workload that your users are using, and then report back on it and see the type of infrastructure that is available. Okay. The last thing I would say is in the properties tab of any query, you're going to find a lot of different useful resources. And as you update the agent, so the Arc agent gets updated on a frequent basis, there are additional capabilities are being added. So you might find other metadata that you can pull in and add to your reports from the query. So here I'm getting operating system version, the SKU, the latest status change in terms of the agent, if it's connected, disconnected, etc. So again, I advise you just to run the query and just look at the properties and see what makes sense to you and use it in your environment. So with that, I think the next module is SSH into Arc-enabled servers.
Yep, so this will be the final module before we do a 10-minute break. But yeah, this feature is one of my personal favorites with Azure Arc. So let's have a look. So I'm going back into the follow along and let's maximize it. Yeah, probably have to reconnect. Let's see. All right, so let's go back to the index and find the shortcut to module number 3, SSH into your Azure Arc-enabled servers. So here we're going to show you how you can access your Arc-enabled servers without having any inbound access network-wise. You don't need any VPN or connection to the machine on the local network. You don't need to expose it behind a public IP address. It will be basically available via the Arc agent. So think of it as kind of a reverse proxy functionality. The first thing you need on the machine that you're going to connect from, in the instructions, we are advising you to do it from the ArcBox client VM, but you can also do this from your local machine. So if you have Azure CLI or Azure PowerShell, you could install these extensions on your local machine to see how you can connect to them from that machine. I'm going to use Azure PowerShell in this case. I already have it pre-installed on my local machine, so I'm going to show that as well, but just go ahead and install the PowerShell modules.
We zoom in a little bit.
Yes, good point. So there we have the modules installed. Feel free to pick CLI if you prefer that. Next thing is to have prerequisites in place in the machines. And here you have to have obviously SSH to connect. And when it comes to Windows, you might think that aren't we using PowerShell remoting or aren't we using RDP to manage Windows? But let's see how this plays out on Windows as well. Because since Windows Server 2016, it's been possible to install, as you might know, OpenSSH on Windows Server. So if you want to check if that's already installed, you can go inside of the nested VM. So let's go back to the 2022 machine, clear the screen for the PowerShell window. Let's clear the screen and just run get service SSHD. And here you can see that it's already installed and running. I think it's enabled by the automation actually, but if you do this in your on-prem environment and you don't see this service already running and present, the commands in the instructions show you how you can do that. So it's basically a built-in feature in Windows Server 2022 and I believe also 2019. For 2016 you have to download it, but here is the command to set up that firewall rules, set the service to automatic start and so forth. That is already done for us. We just wanted to check that it's available. Similar on Linux, their SSH is typically enabled by default, right? But the same command to check systemctl status SSHD on Ubuntu, which is what we're using in ArcBox. So when that is in place, you have SSH enabled on your target machine. The next step is to connect. And here it's a different syntax based on what your preferences are. So I'm going to use the PowerShell example because this is a PowerShell conference after all, right? So let's do that. Copy this one. And if you clear the screen and paste the command, here it will actually pick up the resource group from the environment variable that the automation have set for you. So you can paste it as is, that it should work inside of the client VM. But if you do it from your local machine, you obviously have to update the resource group name with your actual resource group name. The first time you do this, you will get asked to accept the fingerprint, right? That's default when using SSH. And also we have not configured any SSH public-private key pair, so it's asking us for our password. But if we wanted, we could of course use the regular keys for that as well. Arc demo 123 ? Enter. And then we are inside of the virtual machine. I think it's even cooler to show this demo from the local machine, because then it's more proof that it's not any direct connection, right? So if I do this from my local machine instead, and here I have already set up the variables, right? So for the server name, connecting to Ubuntu, local user is Arc demo, and the resource group is this. That I already set up. Here I'm going to run this command to actually connect to it. And instead of, you might notice a difference here, and that is for the demo earlier on, I had this local user parameter, right? I'm not going to use that parameter now because I have already installed this extension. So basically this is an extension to enable Entra ID authentication to Linux. So then it will automatically do single sign-on with the user that you are logged on to Azure PowerShell or Azure CLI with into the guest operating system. And I think that's a huge value proposition, right? That you can use conditional access and all of those Entra ID possibilities within the operating system on Linux. So this command, when you install the extension, it takes about 4 minutes. That's why I have done that in advance. But if we go here and have a quick look at extensions, this is basically a regular extension that you have called ADSSH login that is pre-installed. So let's have a quick look at how that looks when we connect to it. Start to find the right command. There we go. So the same command without -- local user. And if it works, I should be signed in without any prompt at all. This one prerequisite for this is that you have done role assignments, because when you install that extension, you're basically telling Linux, the operating system, to use a PAM system, Entra ID as a PAM system. So to configure role-based access control, you go to the Azure portal, do access control, and you add the virtual machine administrator role to give root access on Linux, or just virtual machine user to log in as a regular user. That's it. And then you can connect like I did here. Final demo before we do the break. Let's clear the screen here, and let's have a look at how to connect to Windows, because there is also a pretty cool feature there to showcase. And that is, as we scroll down, so all of the commands, as you can see, is available in the instructions. So yeah, let's copy this command to log on to the 2022 machine, and then we have to change the username to administrator. On the Windows Linux machine, it was Arc demo. Let's see. And first, let's just do this. We're basically doing exactly the same as we did on the Linux machine, but now we're just doing it against the Windows machine. I have probably the wrong parameter for the resource group, so let me just do this. Because I'm running it locally, right? And that environment variable does not exist locally. So now I should see the same thing. I should be asked for the password. Yeah, this was the wrong resource group name, sorry. Let's just fix that. Resource group name. There is a reason for why I try to avoid typing in in demos, but bear with me. Yeah, there we go. There we go. All right, let's try again. Wasn't it the correct one? Yeah, let's fall back to the one that I pre-created just to get to show it. So follow along. Or did I actually put in the wrong one? Let's see. There we go. So now it should connect to the 2022 machine that we onboarded a few minutes ago. And here it will say the first time you connect to it, that port 2022 is not allowed. And this is something that here I can say, yes, I want to do it. And then it takes a few seconds to set up the backend in Azure to actually allow that relay proxy in the background, right? But this is something that you can control from the server itself via the local agent settings. If there are sensitive computers that you don't want to allow this to, for example, domain controllers or other tier 0 machines, right? And the first time it can take a few seconds before the SSH proxy becomes active. So that's why it might fail on the first attempt and it should succeed on the subsequent attempt. Then I typed in the password, and here you can see that I'm now connected via SSH to the Windows machine from my local machine without any VPN. But the even cooler thing here, I think, is that we can also add --RDP. So we can do RDP wrapped via SSH into the machine, and that is pretty cool as well for that remote scenarios, right, where you have consultants, contractors, people needing remote access to the machine. So first of all, it will spin up the SSH connection, and then it will pop up an RDP window, and it's going to ask you for the credentials the regular way. So if you do arc demo 1, 2, 3, and yes, there you can see it says localhost : and then a random port number. So it's actually setting up a reverse tunnel via localhost that it connects to seamlessly. So now I'm connected into that remote machine via the Arc agent. I think that's a pretty useful feature in practice. If you scroll to the bottom here, the optional task I added at the end is how to use native PowerShell remoting to Azure Arc-enabled servers. And this is a feature that was added to the documentation. I think it was in April. So instead of connecting via regular SSH, you can actually use the PowerShell remoting via the SSH protocol, right? But here it has an example on how to do this via the native command. So I'm not going to go through this now due to the sake of time, but just explain on a high level. You have on Linux, you need to set up PowerShell as a subsystem in the SSHD configuration, right? So basically follow these steps. Then it's possible to do regular PowerShell remoting to Linux. So as soon as that is in place, you can do what we can see here. Set up this command, AC SSH config, which is basically going to generate a configuration file so that you can use any SSH client. For example, if you prefer to use PuTTY or whatever SSH client of your desire, then you can generate the configuration file here, and you can point to that further down there. So if you scroll down a little bit, there you can see the file that it has generated, where it points to the proxy command, which is in practice the executable for the going via the Arc proxy. And here you set up an PowerShell session, right? New PS session in the options hash table. You basically point to the proxy command, and when you hit enter, it will set up a regular PowerShell remoting session. So you can do enter PS session, invoke command, use whatever you're used to with that remote machine. So I think this is also a pretty useful capability, right? To use native PowerShell remoting. All right, then we're going to do a 10-minute break. So if we're back 11:20, and we'll continue with the next module on Azure Monitor. Also, we have stickers. Please come and grab Jumpstart stickers if you want.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look into how to use Azure Monitor, change tracking, and inventory with your newly onboarded Arc-enabled servers. So I'm going to explain how you usually would do the onboarding for those services, but for the sake of the demo, we already installed the extensions and configured everything. One of the capabilities that Arc brings to the table is that you can use Azure Policy to manage your infrastructure. By manage, I mean enforce security settings, configuration, install stuff, enforce things like if someone is trying to install a specific extension, they get denied, whether they're using PowerShell or the portal, etc. So we have built-in policies to onboard Azure Monitor to your Arc-enabled servers. So if you have this policy applied to a resource group and you onboard servers there, automatically extensions for Azure Monitor are going to get installed. You can configure different solutions like VM Insights, we're going to see now. So Azure Policy is the preferred way to onboard Azure capabilities at scale. So if you go to your resource group, you're going to find some policies prefixed with Arcbox. Those are things that the automation has applied for you. So in your environments, you would usually use the same method to do at-scale onboarding. So the capabilities that we're going to talk about today is just VM Insights from Azure Monitor. Obviously, there are other stuff. You can use log analytics to run complex queries and look into logs of your Windows servers and Linux servers. You can look at custom logs. You can look at built-in logs like application logs, system logs, etc. But for the sake of this exercise, we're just going to focus on VM Insights. VM Insights, if you've not seen it before, it's an out-of-the-box solution that allows you to monitor the key metrics of your machine. So we're talking about CPU, memory, disk latency, etc. So all you need to do is there is a policy, you apply the policy, and then all of your machines are gonna get this solution deployed. So if I jump to my environment and go to my Azure Arc Center, for both machines that you've already onboarded, let's select the 2019 and go to extensions. So extensions in Azure, it's a way to extend or add a feature to your virtual machine or Azure resource. And in Azure Arc, you can see that we have a bunch of extensions installed. The Azure Monitor agent is the one that we're looking for, and change tracking as well. So since I have those already installed, if I scroll down, I'm going to go to VM Insights. This is the solution that I was talking about. It has two capabilities. The first one is performance. Performance is going to give you a very nice dashboard on the key metrics of your server. So as you can see, the disks available, the free space, the latency. I can see the CPU utilization, memory, networking, etc. So it's a very useful dashboard to get. And of course, you can see this on the level of all of the Arc-enabled servers. Here, I'm just focusing on just this machine. So this is useful for troubleshooting, understanding the performance of your on-premises or multi-cloud server. Another cool capability that you can play with is the dependency map. So imagine situations where you have a two-tier application, a database and a web app, and you come on Monday and they're not talking to each other. Something is happening. So this map shows you your server and all of the connections that are incoming to your servers and all of the connections that are outgoing from your server. So for example, here I can see that my server is connecting to port 53 DNS. And since we're deploying this in Azure, it's going to the Azure DNS server. So I can see which ports services are initiating ports out of my server and vice versa. The red arrow here is saying that there has been a communication to port 80 to two servers, and this was blocked or it has failed. So I can see that it tried to reach out to this server on port 80 and it it was not able to connect. So this can help me troubleshoot which port is failing. Maybe on the other server, this port, the firewall has been blocked. So it's useful to troubleshoot and understand the connectivity matrix of my servers. So those are the two main capabilities of VM Insights. As I mentioned, I can go into log analytics, and I can run queries to, for example, understand the correlation between CPU and memory. If I have high CPU, maybe it's affecting the memory, or it's a result of the disk being hammered. So I can run queries and visualize, and of course I can connect this to Power BI and a bunch of other stuff. So this is some of the capabilities that Azure Monitor would bring to the table. One last thing before we go into inventory and change tracking. Azure Monitor is not just about metrics, but also it allows you to look at the logs. So as I mentioned, I can look at the Windows logs. I can look at the sys logs of Linux. I can also, if your application has custom logs, you can collect those logs and you can query them using the Kusto query language as well. And in this exercise, we're gonna do that for the Windows logs. So if you scroll a little bit down after VM Insights, the way that you customize what data is being sent is through something called data collection rules. So I'm going to create a new data collection rule. I'm going to select the same resource group, same region. And I'm going to select just Windows for now. And then I can select which Azure resources that I want to tie this data collection rule with. Maybe I have some collection rules for production servers, maybe some collection rules for another tier server. So you can have different configuration for different servers. I'm going to select my server. And then now I can select what do I want to collect. So I can look at the performance counters. And here you'd see most of the counters that you'd like to look at. You can select the sampling rate. And then you can select where do you want to send those metrics. I can send them to Azure Monitor Logs, or I want to look at them in a log analytics workspace so I can run queries. So here I'm going to select my created workspace. And also I want to collect logs, event logs. So I'm going to select Windows event logs, and I'm going to select critical warning, critical error warning. Again, with the destination, I'm going to send them to my log analytics workspace. Okay. Once I've done that, now collection of those data is going to be dumped into the log analytics. So this takes like 5-10 minutes, so we're not going to wait for it. But just to show you, when you come back to it, we already created a couple of workbooks or dashboards that can help you visualize how things look like. So if I scroll down after you configure this, and if you go to Azure Monitor and select workbooks, those workbooks are created for you for the automation. So you're going to be able to see the different alerts that we've created, like machine missing heartbeat. The Arc agent is not sending heartbeat, so you can monitor this. You can get triggered. We have also CPU alerts. You can look at the alerts and play with them as you'd like. We also have a performance and capacity workbook so that you can see the different metrics. Of course, all of this you can create your own workbooks, but to help you visualize, we've created a couple of basic ones. And of course, the Windows event log. So you can see how many events, how many warning events. And as you can see, this seems pretty basic, but if you think about Azure Arc and its value, you have thousands of servers on VMware, on AWS, on Azure, on premises. So seeing all of this from just one place is really interesting.
Retention is configured in log analytics.
Correct, yes. By default, it's around 30 days, but you can extend as you'd like. Yes. So the second thing that we're going to look at is change tracking and inventory. Starting with inventory, since it's like the name suggests, it's allow you to understand what's on your servers. So usually you'd like to know what software is installed on your servers, what updates have been installed, for example, what services are running, what services are stopped, the registry keys, even files and folders in specific locations. So inventory allows you to do just that. So if I go to inventory, I'm going to see all of this information. And of course, I can run queries to do so. So I can imagine that maybe you had a phishing campaign to your users, and a malicious executable has been downloaded in somewhere. You can just run a query here to say, show me all of the machines that have this exe installed. Does not matter where the server is located. You'll be able to get this information if you click on Log Analytics, and then you can run the query from there. Similarly for files, Windows services, etc. Taking this up a little bit with change tracking. Change tracking allows you to see the changes that happened on your machines. Let's say you come on Monday, domain controllers are not working. You go to change tracking and it's going to show you all of the changes, let's say, happened in the last 24 hours regarding services, registry keys, files, software. Maybe an update has been installed that caused a problem. Maybe a registry key was changed by mistake, etc. So change tracking allows you to understand what really happened on your machines. So in the exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to play with the hosts file. So you're going to go in the host file on the 2019 machine. You're going to add an entry in the host file. And then after 15 minutes, change tracking is going to show you that this file has changed. And you can also, in the exercise, you're also going to see the content, what actually changed. You're going to see that this line was added to this file in the past hour, for example. So this is also a useful capability to see what has changed in the files as well. So to configure that, I'm going to go to settings. And I've already configured this. So as you can see, I'm looking for the host file, and I want to monitor changes that are happening to this host file. And what I've done is that I've selected this option to upload file content to true. This allows to have a storage account, and then any changes to this file are going to be uploaded to the storage account. So I can see what actually has changed in the file. So I can look at the file content there. So I recommend that you go through this, configure this, and then at the end of the session, go back to the portal to see the changes, because it takes some time. Okay. So the next module before I hand over to Jan is patch management. So usually on premises, you might already have a patch management solution, maybe SACM, maybe for Linux, something else. So once you onboard to Arc, you're able to use Azure services. So the service we're going to use now is Azure Update Manager. So this is a native Azure solution. Previously, it relied on Log Analytics agent. Now it's not a prerequisite. It has its own extension, so you don't need to have Log Analytics. What we're going to do is that if we go to Update Manager, it's going to automatically show you that you have some Arc machines, and you're going to be able to onboard those machines to Update Manager. It needs an extension to be installed. In the automation, we do this for you. So as you can see, once the extension is installed, it detected that my machines are pending some updates for Linux and Windows. And I can click on the updates and look at what actually are the updates that are missing on my machine. The cool thing about this feature is that it allows you to do on-demand assessment of updates. Previously, you had to wait for the schedule that you specified so the machine can assess. Now I can simply just click check for update. Then it's going to select the machines, check for update. It's going to go check if there are any missing update. And actually, there is a one-time update option. So regardless of the schedule, I want to update those machines now. So I can do this.
Can you configure specific repositories for Linux machines?
So yeah, that's a good question. So the Azure Update Manager respects the operating system level configuration. So let's say for Windows, you have a WSOS instance and you have the machines going there. If the group policy is set, Update Manager is going to go to configure the machines to still go to WSOS and get the updates. Similar for Linux. If you have a private repository, it's going to respect that. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to show you is the schedule. So Update Manager allow you to have a more flexible scheduling than the previous version. So if I say every month, then for Patch Tuesday, I can say I can create one batch to be like the third Wednesday, and I can select an offset from this date. So you can create multiple phases after Patch Tuesday so that you don't patch every machine at the same time and break everything on one day. Just move it to a different day. So once you configure different schedules, then Update Manager is going to do its magic, and on this schedule, it's going to pick up the updates, install them on the machine, reboot, and then report back the status of your machines. So the last thing to show you is the reporting, which was not that good in the previous version. So if I go back to Portal, since the previous version used log analytics, you had to run Kustu queries to be able to query. But now with Update Manager, it uses Azure Resource Graph, so it's easier to query your machine. So there is a built-in workbook, but of course you can build your own workbooks if you'd like. So if I'm going to select this, so here I'm going to get some basic information around the machines available, the machines that are pending updates. I'm going to see also information around the status of the machines that have pending updates, whether they're Windows, whether they're Linux. I'm going to also see the top updates that are pending on both platforms, and the maintenance configuration that I have. Those are the schedules. So I'm going to see if I have machines on the fourth week of the month, what are the status of those machines, etc., etc. So very useful information out of the box, but again, you can write your own queries to make more appealing dashboards. And I think next is machine configuration. But one last thing that you're going to see in the exercise is dynamic scopes. So now you can create like dynamic rules for those schedules. So you can say this schedule is going to be for all Arc Linux machines with the specific tag. So previously, you would not be able to do so. Now you can use tags to have dynamic so that you don't have to revisit those configuration every couple of months. It's going to be dynamic based on the resources that you have. Okay, ready for? Yeah. Okay.
So the last module for the day, this is a module that when I go through it manually, I use approximately 20 minutes. So I recommend you to try it out later on if you're interested. You don't have to try to follow along now because we have only 5 minutes left. So I just want to highlight the value proposition, what machine configuration can do, and you can try it out on your own later on. So if you go into the follow along machine, let's just maximize it. And here you have in order, because there are a lot of commands that you have to run here. So instead of you having to go copy paste, what we have done is to prepare a notebook. So if you open Visual Studio Code on the machine, the client machine, you go into extensions, and you have to install this polyglot notebook extension. And as soon as that extension is installed, you should be able to open this dib file. The path to the file is available inside of the instruction, so you can find all the details there. But then you basically get the markdown version with the commands that you need to run inline. So here you can see that, for example, the first thing is to install some specific versions of modules. So here you can, instead of copy pasting the commands, you can simply press the play button here, and it's going to run it for you, install it for you, so you don't have to go back and forth. Same with logging on. Here we have to log on with the personal account because the managed identity we are signed in with does not have permissions to create policy assignments on the subscription level. So this step will actually sign you out from the managed identity context, and you will be prompted to log on with your own user account. That's a prerequisite. And when that is in place, we can have a look at what we are actually trying to achieve here. So first, let's have a quick look at what we are trying to achieve. So if we go back to the Azure portal, we go into one of the Arc machines that we have here. Let's do the 2022 machine. Make sure that we are in the other resource group. Just 1 minute. 2022 and demo. Yeah, let's just take this one. Then you can scroll down in their operations. We have this option called machine configuration, right? So here we have a lot of default settings, but what we can actually do here is, default policies for things like auditing, security settings, Defender, log analytics, all of those things that is coming from the platform itself. But what we can do here, if we do create, we can actually use our own desired state configurations to do things inside the operating system, install features, install packages, and whatnot. So that is the gist of this module, to create a DSC configuration, upload it to Azure as an Azure policy definition, assign it to the resource group where these Arc machines are onboarded, and then it will eventually pop up after 20 minutes or so. It will converge, apply the policy, and so forth. So the high-level version of how you do this, create a storage account, because the configuration needs to be stored somewhere, right? So the storage account that you create will be used to basically store the configuration, and that will be referenced in the Azure policy definition that you are creating. This is the example configuration that we are creating. So if you have worked with DSC before, you recognize the configuration keyword, right? And here we set up what we want to do. So in this case, we install an MSI package, which is PowerShell 7. We create a local user and we set the SMB1 to be absent. We don't want it, right? So this is just an example configuration, but here you can bring existing DSC configurations that you have created, compile them and upload them to the Azure policy in machine configuration. So I'm not going to go through all of the steps, just show high level what it's doing. After you have compiled and created that MOF file, right, in the local file system, you're going to create a new machine configuration package, which is basically a zip file with all of the MOF files and all of the artifacts, modules, dependent modules, everything included in that zip file. Then you can test it locally if you want. You can run this command to test it locally, that it works as you want, so you don't have to assign it via policy and wait 20 minutes every time. You can do the local development and test locally. When you're happy with the results, this is the command to upload the zip file to the storage account. The final piece is to, of course, create the Azure policy definition, which is referencing the zip file inside of the storage account. And the last piece is to actually assign that definition to a scope. So in the level up or in the lab here, we are doing it on the resource group level, but you could, of course, do it on the subscription level or the management group level if desired. So the last piece here, a new policy assignment, that will do it on that level. The last piece is just to do a remediation. So the first time you apply it, you have to consciously decide when do I want to remediate, because this can be destructive to production, right? So it's by design that you have to decide when do we want to do the initial remediation to this policy. So basically this command starts a policy remediation. And then you can see in the Azure portal that you will have under machine configuration this new Windows custom configuration. And you will, if you click on it, you will get to see that we have configured it with apply and autocorrect. So it will actually fix the settings that are not compliant when you do the remediation. And going into it, you can see eventually that all 3 resources are compliant. And then if you go and check, you can see that the local user is there and all of the other things are being converged. So that's the final module. There is also one module on the Windows Admin Center that we didn't have time to, but feel free to go through them asynchronously. Feel free to reach out to us either in the breaks, in the conference, in the evening tonight for the community dinner, or just contact us online and we can assist you if there are any issues. I think we are on time, so let's wrap this up with the proposed next steps. So first and foremost is aka.ms/arc jumpstart. That's the single takeaway, I believe, from the session. This is where you find all of the scenarios, Arcbox, and all of the other good things that we have in the Jumpstart. If you have any issues, feel free to go to the repository that is linked from the website. If you go to the upper right corner, you find the link to the GitHub project. There you can submit an issue, either if you have a problem or if you have any suggestions to what we can improve, or if you'd like to contribute. We're also very happy to take contributions via pull requests in the repository. So that's the main takeaway. There are also a couple of related sessions later today by colleagues from Microsoft, Arnulf, which is a program manager for Arc-enabled Servers. And also on Thursday, there is one related on Azure Arc, where they will showcase other features that we did not have time to show today. So yeah, I think we're on time. Enjoy the lunch. Feel free to contact us afterwards, and thank you very much for your time.